Series number 4, meeting 2D. Glad to see you all here tonight. We've got a lot of things to cover. Of course, you're all familiar with buttegeneralplan.net, the website. Hopefully you've been visiting. Lots of information has been posted there the last several weeks, and it continues to be posted, so it's a good place to check in periodically. We try to highlight for you in the certain areas of the website when things are updated or newly posted. So again, check back. Also, if you're on the listserv, the email list that receives notices about meetings, you can check that information as well as those come out to you. That such things that informed you of tonight's meeting. How many of you are on the email list, just so I can see a show of hands? Okay. And the rest of you, you should get on the email list. And just go to buttegeneralplan.net. On the right side, under the meetings, you'll see a place to enter your email address, and then you'll be added to the list. We have about 450 people on the list right now. A reminder, this is where we are in terms of workshop series number 4. We're about halfway through the project, and we're really focusing in tonight on the selection and the finalization and recommendation of the Citizens Advisory Committee on a preferred alternative. And so that's the goal tonight. I want to remind you, we do have 13 guiding principles, and those are should be available to you in many different formats. These are a picture of the study areas. We have 34 study areas throughout the county. 31 are actually in the unincorporated portion of the county. And we have a lot of exhibits and resources showing these. We'll be going through these again tonight to get a summary information. We've talked a lot about growth projections. We do have the BCAG, the Butte County Association of Governments projections. This is the population projections through the year 2030. And you can see we're planning at the bottom there, the total increase. We're planning for 104,000 people countywide to be added. These are the numbers we're using. In the unincorporated part of the county, we're planning 24,000. And that's about our 1% growth rate that we've had over the last 15 or 20 years. And you can see the breakdown between each of the jurisdictions as well. And these we might refer back to these, so we'll put these up if we need to bring them back later on in the meeting. As this relates to dwelling units, we're planning 10,500 dwelling units in the county over the next 20 years. And you can see that the total is about 44,000. So what you've done so far in the last 3 meetings, you've reviewed the 31 study areas. You've reviewed different alternatives for each of the study areas. Sometimes you've created a new alternative for a study area. You've selected an alternative for each study area as a result. And I want to just show you what that looks like, the work you've done to date. I don't know if you can see this. This is the housing projections information. And I'll jump right to the totals. And we'll talk a lot about this tonight. So this is just to kind of introduce the total picture to you tonight. Here's the BCAG number that I just showed you, the 43,883. That's the projection over the next 20 years for all 6 jurisdictions, the 5 cities and the county. What you've come up with so far is this number on the left, the 69,405 dwelling unit count. This is the total of all of the alternatives that you've selected to date. So that's this number here. This is using a different growth projection rate just to kind of show you if we assumed a higher growth rate instead of the, actually, let's go back for a second. You can see on the right here that we have different growth rates for each jurisdiction, and the average is 2%. If for some reason you felt like that was too low, a 2.5% number would yield a 75,000 dwelling unit count. So just to kind of give you some point of reference. So at 43,883, that is about 2% growth rate. Okay. You can see also from this, if you're familiar with our study areas, this set of study areas is in the Orville area. And so you've identified a lot of potential growth in the Orville area. In this area, earlier on to the left of this chart, this is North Chico Specific Plan, Belmure. And then, so these two are close to Chico. This first one is Chico, the city of Chico. Here's the city of Orville. And we have Biggs over here as well. So this just gives you a sense of kind of the synopsis or the summary of the information that you've created so far. The purpose of tonight is to make sure this is the information you want us to take forward to the Planning Commission. And we're going to have a discussion here. Dan is going to facilitate, and Tanya will also facilitate, to talk about if there are any corrections, amendments, changes you want to make to this. There's another side of the story, too, and we've been really wanting you to keep this in mind, and that's the issue of jobs. So there's one side of projecting growth in terms of dwelling units. There's another part when you look at industrial lands, retail lands, mixed-use lands. That's where the jobs are generated. It's kind of interesting what has been created so far. The total number of county jobs shown as you add all these numbers up is 113,000 jobs, which is kind of, I don't think, quite realistic, and we'll talk about that in a little bit as well. Again, you can see where the big spikes, study area 23 and study area 26. I think these numbers are worth some discussion. These actually come from the city of Orville's general plan, and I do want to have us discuss them tonight with you and talk about their assumptions and just to validate with you whether or not you want to go forward with their assumptions or not. Because personally, I don't think we're quite refined enough on this jobs area, the jobs list. But again, I wanted to show you what this looks like, what you've, in the 31 study areas that you voted on, these numbers are what you have voted on and are recommending. Okay? There's a couple of things I'll just highlight for you. It may come up tonight, it may not, but there's the question of, as you look at the various tables that you have, you see square footage of, you see an area measurement for types of land uses, industrial, retail. And there's a conversion factor, and that comes from the alternatives evaluation report. And the source is page B-8 of the alternatives evaluation report. And it's where we connect square footage for retail. It's one employee per 450 square feet. And for industrial, it's one employee per 750 square feet. So if you want to convert, and I think I did that on an example. If we look back at the North Chico specific plan for a second, look at this number over here, 10,164 jobs. The question is, where did that come from? Well, if you look at the table, and it's in the handout that you have tonight that's been adjusted by the work you've done so far. It's on an 11 by 17 page. It shows 1.4 million square feet of retail and 5.2 square feet of industrial. When you divide that by the square footage per employee, that's where you get your yield of 10,164 jobs. So the numbers aren't just made up, is kind of my point. They come from a calculation, a formula. And, you know, if you want to debate the formula, that's fine. This is what our experts at Bay Area Economics came up with as a way to translate square footage into jobs. Okay? I think with that, I'm going to come back to another meeting later on, but are there any questions about what information I just went over? Because you're going to have a lot of time to discuss this tonight. And, okay, I think with that, yes, Pia.
When we have a bar graph that is off to this side that is so much higher than projections, and when you're saying we need to revisit it, are you talking about that we need to sort of bring that bar graph down, or should consider bringing it down, or
well,
are we unrealistic in our view of how we voted on these study areas? And should we? I'm a little bit confused why you're saying we need to revisit it.
Well, the goal is that we've talked about is having a jobs housing balance, and it's a good thing to have a lot more job potential. I mean, that's one perspective. In one way of looking at it, your goal might be 69,000 jobs to create or to have available. This is just information. I'm just offering you my observations, okay? And so it's kind of up to you what you want to do with this. I would like the discussion actually to happen between all of you tonight.
Now?
What?
Should that happen now on the jobs issue?
I think, well, we're going to get into it a little bit deeper. This was just to kind of introduce this, and I think you can have plenty of chance to kind of beat this around. So, yes, Bruce?
That formula that Bay Area Economics has, is that a general formula or an area-specific formula, like for rural areas and, you know, metropolis areas, or do you know?
I don't know for sure. I do
Because
not.
I would question the formula.
Okay.
Actually, the formula tracks with what you see from BOMA and CCIM and other industry groups, like national rule of thumb stuff.
So, John, is this a number you've seen around?
Yeah.
Okay.
And the other thing is I think we spent a whole lot of time talking about dwelling units and
Yep. You
probably not enough time, you know, correlating the job situation to the dwelling units.
Well, I think tonight we want to just present to you the snapshot of the accumulation of your work to date. And then we have some other information we're going to review with you, and we'll see how this goes. I don't think we have a script necessarily for how tonight's going to turn out. We just want to introduce information to you and then kind of punt it back to you to have the discussion that you need to have, because this is going to go forward as your recommendation. And I'm going to expect and hope that when we get into the Planning Commission and the board, that you're going to be there supporting your recommendation. That's the idea, is you become the advocates in this process for this plan that we're writing. So I think with that, I'm going to wrap it up. I'm going to turn it over to Tanya. Tanya's going to take us to the next step of discussions.
Could I ask a question, Tanya, before you begin?
Yes.
This is for the Citizens Advisory Committee. And when I went home last week, I wasn't really comfortable with the conclusions that we'd come to, and partly that was because I felt we didn't really get a chance to talk to one another, unlike at the Orville setting, when I think, regardless of what someone's position was, I understood why a person was making the point they were and why they desired a particular alternative as opposed to another. So we're going to be together for quite a while yet. So at least for me, and I know for a couple of other people in the group, we'd like to know the reasoning behind people's decision so that when we go home, at least we can feel that there was, to the best of our ability, some sort of attempt to achieve consensus. And so tonight, as we start back over ground that's some of it been well plowed, I hope that in the process we'll have time to talk to one another, to try to understand one another's positions, and then move on. And I felt really pretty rushed last time, and I think many other people did too. And as we got to the end of the evening, if you were one of the groups being considered at the end of the evening, you might be a little frustrated. So I think there are some issues that it's reasonable to come back to tonight, but I really would like to know what people think and why.
Well, and Scott, I think we will definitely have time for that during our discussion tonight. We will allow each CAC member to nominate one or several study areas and give a reason for why they want to nominate that study area for reopening it. And then during the context of that discussion, we'll be able to have further discussion. So, okay, so I'm going to, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
This is kind of a follow-up on Scott's observation, and I think Scott's observation resulted in a little bit of what I'd like to make a personal formal request to everyone here, is that we try to work a little bit more with point of order in the meetings, and kind of with as rushed as we were at last week's meeting and as compassionate as many people felt about many of the issues, a lot of the waiting, holding up your hand, waiting to be called upon really fell to disuse, and it was actually whoever spoke loudest, quickest, and interrupted whoever was speaking at their last pause was the one that got heard. And I was part of that as well, I'll have to admit, but I would really like to see more point of order in following whoever's leading the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Todd. And Dan will be doing most of the facilitation tonight, and I'm sure he'll be cognizant of that. So I'd like to just move on and just go over the agenda briefly and get into the meat of the meeting. So first, let's just go over the agenda briefly. We are going to have some presentations for about 40 minutes. I'll be presenting the preliminary preferred land use alternative that you guys decided on over the course of the last 3 meetings. We'll have a period for questions and answers by the CAC members, and then we'll have a half an hour for public comment. Then we'll move on to this opportunity to reopen study areas for discussion, and we'll as I said before, we'll have a straw poll for study areas that are nominated on whether or not to discuss them, and then we'll have a time allotted for each of those study areas for discussion. At the end of that large group discussion, we'll review what you've discussed tonight, and we'll actually present to you updated projection figures, and we'll revise those bar charts that Tim presented to you in the beginning of the meeting, so you can see the new preferred land use alternative based on the outcomes of tonight. And finally, after we show you that, we'll open it back up for a kind of final discussion by the CAC, and we would like ultimately for the CAC to all vote or have a straw poll and express support for this final recommendation, and then we'll have some closing and next steps. Also, I just want to highlight what's in your packet tonight. The CAC was mailed out a packet last Friday, and that included the agenda, the summary of your deliberations outcomes from the last 3 meetings, one errata memo, and public letters and comments. And those letters and comments are organized beginning with the general plan and more policy-related comments. Then the comments are regarding those that refer to several study areas. And then finally, there'll be comments about individual study areas. So that's in that first packet that was mailed out to you on Friday. And then there's a supplemental packet that has been distributed tonight, and that does include that preliminary preferred land use alternative map and table. That's the meat of our discussion tonight, and also additional public letters and comments that have been submitted since the packet was mailed. And those public letters and comments are organized in the same way as the first packet.
If we didn't receive the packet in the mail, is there others available tonight?
There are some available at the registration desk, and I think that they should have been left at your seat here. If you didn't, then I think one of the county staff might be able to hand you one. And so the next item on the agenda is for me to present the preferred land use alternative. But before we do that, Richard Price, the County Agriculture Commissioner, would like to speak with you for a few minutes about Study Area 23 and the agricultural resources there. Oh, and 24. Sorry.
24. Right.
Come on. And you can just use the space bar.
24 or 23?
24. 23 is another subject altogether. And there's a bunch of information in the packet. But I was asked at the conclusion of the last meeting to look at some of the information regarding Study Area 24. And what I did is I actually went out and tried to ground truth at least part of it, not the whole study area, because not all of it is accessible. But in the southeast portion of this study area is Lake Wyandotte. And so you kind of can see some of the terrain from the distance as you look to the southeast, far towards away from it. And then as you head north, this is north of Lake Wyandotte, as you head north towards the study, you can start seeing you got mixed chaparral, you got oaklands, scrub oaks, kind of a mixed conifer mix. And here's what it looks like, the intersection of Forbstown and Hurlton Road. So you can see, as there's a lot of thick brush here, it kind of levels off in certain areas. And then there's gradual slopes as you head north out of Forbstown Road towards 162. One of the surprises is that we have citrus. We have some unique, I believe probably unique farmland status, and this is on the west as you face on Forbstown heading north towards 162. This is on the west side, and it's easy to miss some of this area because there's windbreaks and other areas that kind of cover it up. And as you go into, this is off the old Olive Highway, and you'll see the intersection here in a minute. There's probably, I'm guessing, maybe 50, 60 acres of unique farmland actually mixed into part of this unit that doesn't show up even on the special farmland maps that they base their studies on. And here, just across the way, it changes very quickly, and this is facing northeast into the rest of the study area. And this is heading east towards the study area from Highway 162 Forbstown, looking at that intersection, looking southeast into the study area. And so I just wanted to give you a brief overlook. There were some questions about what the terrain looked like. There's slopes in there probably exceeding 5-10%, sometimes 20%. But there's also some unique farmland that didn't show up on the study area. So it was just for information purposes only. That was my charge. Thank you. Okay.
Coming over for
I have a question for Richard.
Oh, sure.
Does any of the other land have the potential to be converted to, say, vineyards or that sort of thing?
There is. And you can grow, you don't need a unique farmland really to grow vineyards. You can grow, in fact, they thrive better on some of the non-unique farmlands because, they tend to like to be stressed. And you have to understand, in this particular area by the lake there, we have a banana belt. And historically, some of that area, we had lots of citrus at one time. In fact, at one time, not that far from this area, about 5 miles down the road, we had the largest citrus packing shed in California until the freezes in the late 1920s, early 30s wiped out the citrus. And now we have straggling mandarins and other specialty citrus, but we have folks plant them. And you have to really, the climate is very dynamic in this area. So, but yeah, they would be sustainable for some unique vineyards here.
Okay, so at this point I'm going to go into a presentation of the preliminary preferred land use alternative. That's the result of your deliberations over the past 3 meetings. And just to let you know, the order of the study areas that I'll be discussing is what's shown on the spreadsheet that's in your packet that was distributed today. It's not in numerical order. We tried to group the study areas so that we talk about all of the study areas that are around each of the cities in groups. So we're going to start with the Chico area. There are 3 study areas that are within the Chico area that could be annexed by the city of Chico, and that's study area 2, 3, and 9. So I'll start with study area 2, the North Chico specific plan. You chose alternative 1, which is the existing general plan, and the existing North Chico specific plan. We did keep the public designation within the core, although originally the North Chico specific plan designated that area for a school, which is not compatible with the airports. There are other public uses that are compatible with the adjacent airport, and so we did leave in the public designation, which was the direction of the CAC. As you can see, the majority of the study area, the outer portion of the study area is very low density residential, has some commercial and industrial and public uses along Highway 99, and then in that village core area, there's higher density residential as well as some additional industrial, commercial, and public uses. This alternative allows approximately 3,900 new homes, and I'd like to point out that when we recalculated our build-out projections for the preferred land use alternative, there were a few cases where the number of dwelling units actually increased. And so I'll point those out in the presentation tonight, and please keep that in mind if that may affect your decision on a preferred land use alternative. So this alternative allows 3,900 new homes. The alternatives evaluation report published alternative 1 is allowing 3,800 new homes. So it's a relatively small increase of about 100 new homes. This alternative also would produce approximately 10,000 jobs. Study Area 3 is Belmure. You chose Alternative 2, which is a mix of residential densities and also this 10 acres of retail uses. This would allow approximately 3,000 new homes and produce about 290 jobs. The CAC did direct, though, that this development should only occur under the auspices of the City of Chico and or in close coordination with the City of Chico. Study Area 9 is Doe Mill Honey Run. The CAC chose Alternative 4, which is a specific plan overlay with agriculture as the underlying zoning general plan designation. And this specific plan designation is a new designation that we haven't had in our alternatives before. And so I'll give you kind of just what we understand that definition to be, and that's that the specific plan designation would require land uses to be consistent with the underlying or base designation, which in this case is agriculture, until the specific plan is in place, at which point the specific plan will direct land uses. So this specific plan, the CAC directed that it should follow the developer proposal, which would allow approximately 1,500 new homes, as well as some retail that would produce about 870 jobs. It also includes plans for an extensive regional park, a community park, and a school. And this specific plan development would happen under the county jurisdiction. That was clarified at the meeting.
Oh, no. There was a split vote on that? Yep.
I don't have the votes right in front of me.
There were two proposals. One, specific plan only under the city, and there's another one that said under the county. There's a big difference.
So I think what we have is that 9 preferred this alternative as I presented it, and that 5 preferred alternative 5, which is that it would happen under the city jurisdiction. And so we've taken the simple majority here that nine members of the CAC voted for. But that report, the Planning Commission and Board of Supervisors will be well aware of the fact that 5 people, that it wasn't the distribution of the votes. So for the purposes of mapping something, we took the simple majority. In Study Area 4, this is Forest Ranch. You chose alternatives 2 and 3, which leaves the majority of this study area in agriculture, but maintains a 20 acres of retail in the town center. We did not receive direction from you to redefine this retail area, so it's this kind of ill-defined circle in the center of town. But this would produce, at 20 acres of retail, it would produce about 580 jobs. So this next set of study areas are those that are adjacent to the town of Paradise, and there are 5 study areas number 5, 10, 11, 12, and 13, so I'll go through these next. Study Area 5 is the Magalia Paradise Pines study area. We chose, the CAC chose Alternative 3 that was slightly modified to include the retail area that's under the existing general plan, or Alternative 1. The majority of this area is in rural residential, but it does maintain the medium density residential and public designations from the existing general plan. With the idea, I think the idea here was that those medium density residential areas are primarily already urbanized, but that the areas outside of those urbanized areas would be designated for very low residential development. In this case, when we recalculated the build-out potential, we found a very significant increase. The alternatives evaluation report, Alternative 3, that you chose, showed that this alternative would would allow approximately 400 new homes. However, that calculation only looked at the rural residential area, and so when we looked closer and we looked at the vacant and underutilized land in the medium density residential area, it was a significant increase, and so this alternative actually produces about 3,800 new homes. So that's a very significant increase. This also does, because of the retail, this would produce about 4,900 jobs. Study area 10 is Skyway/Neal Road. All of the CAC members preferred alternative 1 with the exception of the Tuscan Ridge Golf Course development area. This straw poll in this case was split between no development in that golf course area, allowing 50 units and allowing 165 units. In this case, what we mapped here is 50 units. Because the vote was split among these 3 votes, the majority of the CAC voted for some development, and so we took the majority of the CAC would at least go vote for 50, and so that's why we went with the 50 unit count here. Aside from the Tuscan Ridge Golf Course, there's some rural residential adjacent to the town limits, also some agriculture and resource conservation, and this alternative allows about 80 units in total. There's 50 units in the golf course and then another 30 in that rural residential. Study area 11 is the Paradise Urban Reserve. You chose alternative 1, which is the existing general plan, which is an urban reserve designation. In the way the urban reserve designation is currently crafted, it allows 20-acre parcels until the area is needed for development and adequate services are available. Under that scenario, that the 20-acre parcels, it would allow about 100 new units. We've given some more thought to the urban reserve designation, and we're proposing that designation actually be changed so that rather than allowing any development, it would prohibit any further parcelization until the area is annexed by the cities or towns. We want to make sure that any urban reserve designation we have is consistently applied throughout the entire county, and we have heard in our discussions with the cities of Gridley and Biggs that they are very strongly opposed to any parcelization in the areas around their cities and would like that urban reserve designation. And so we're considering this urban reserve designation to change in that way. And so there is a change in that from the alternative that you selected in that this would not allow any units if we designate it as an urban reserve. Study Area 12 is a Southeast Paradise specific plan, and you chose to defer to the town's plan for this study area. We were able to obtain some updated information from the town, although it's still very preliminary and very general. They did anticipate that there would be approximately 600 new homes at a high maximum in the unincorporated area of the Southeast Area Specific Plan, and it would produce approximately 90 jobs. And so those are the build-out figures that we're using, and we just applied the specific plan designation here. In Study Area 13, South Paradise/Pence Road, you chose alternative 1, which is all resource conservation. Study Area 6 is Upper Stilson Canyon. Here again, the CAC designated this area with a specific plan overlay, and resource conservation is the base layer. So again, here, this area would be required to be consistent with a resource conservation designation until a specific plan is in place. The specific plan, the CAC directed that the specific plan follow the developer proposal, which would allow approximately 675 new homes and include some retail that would produce about 100 jobs. This proposal also includes some significant agriculture and resource conservation uses. Study Area 7 is a Concow study area. You chose alternative 2, which leaves the majority of this study area in resource conservation, although it does maintain the small retail area near the Camelot subdivision that would produce about 150 jobs. Study Area 8 is the Berry Creek study area. You chose alternative 2, which leaves the majority of this in agriculture. And again, you maintain the retail that's under the existing general plan, and that would produce about 700 jobs. Again, here the retail is left at this kind of undefined circle, and we didn't receive direction to define that. Study Area 14 is the Nance Canyon Highway 99 study area. You chose Alternative 1, which is the existing general plan, which leaves this entire study area in agriculture. Study Area 15 is the Hamlin Canyon Highway 99 study area. You chose Alternative 4, which follows a developer proposal, which allows about 400 acres of industrial uses, which would produce about 9,300 jobs. The map that the developer submitted to us is what you can see on the map here, with this large area designated as possible for development. However, this is much larger than 400 acres. It's about 1,800 acres. And so we mapped that as industrial/resource conservation with a limit on the amount of industrial use at 400 acres. And then the whole remainder of the study area would be left in agriculture. Study Area 16 is the Oroville-Chico Highway/Highway 99 study area. You chose Alternatives 1 and 2, which is the existing general plan and which leaves the area in agriculture. Study Area 17 is the Durham study area. You chose Alternative 1, which is the existing general plan, and which is also consistent with the Durham-Dayton-Nelson plan. This general plan designation includes higher residential densities in the town center and some retail, industrial, and public uses, some very low density around the edge of town, and then agriculture in the outskirt areas. This would allow approximately 500 new homes. And again, this is another situation in which our build-out figure from the Alternatives Evaluation Report was incorrect. It said it was only 50 new homes, but in fact, upon further analysis, it's 500 new homes allowed under this alternative. The retail industrial uses would produce about 1,200 jobs. On this study area, I want to highlight that there was some confusion on our part about the water supply analysis. At the Chico meeting, we provided you with an errata memo that indicated that all of the alternatives should have received a D because there was a water district that we identified as providing water for future development. However, we later realized that it was pointed out to us that it's actually only the district only serves agricultural uses, and so it wouldn't really be available for urban development in the future. And so our errata memo said we should have assigned that any development there a D. However, we overlooked that the Durham Irrigation District is also in this vicinity. It's in the western portion of the study area. And so, in fact, our original scores of Bs for the study area were correct. So I wanted to point that out, and that's also summarized in your errata memo tonight. Study Area 18 is the Durham-Dayton/Highway 99 study area. CAC chose Alternative 1, which is the existing general plan and leaves it all in agriculture. And you can see on the slide there was some question and confusion about this study area's location and relation to the Brook Family Farm access road. So I think, Mike, you were talking about that. And you can see on the slide that there's quite a distance between the two, the study area and the farm access road. So I think that hopefully that clarifies the location. Study Area 19 is the Durham-Penn/Highway 99 study area. Here you chose Alternatives 1 and 2, which is the existing general plan, and which leaves this all in agriculture. Study Area 20, Highway 91, Durham-Penns Road. You chose a combination of Alternatives 1 and 2, which basically leaves the entire study area in agriculture except for the retail area near the intersection, and you chose to use the retail from Alternative 2, which is an expanded retail area that would produce about 870 jobs. So now I'm going to discuss the 6 study areas that surround the city of Oroville. That's study areas 21, 23, 25, 26, 27, and 28. Beginning with the Thermalito study area. You choose to follow the city's general plan, which leaves the majority of this study area in medium-density residential. There are some pockets of very low density, medium-high, and high-density residential, as well as pockets of mixed use, retail, and public and resource conservation. And actually, that mixed use is all along Highway 162. The mixed use is a new land use category for the county's process. It's something that we took on from the City of Oroville's general plan. And in order to calculate our build-out potential in this mixed-use category, we use the City of Oroville's general assumptions for this, which basically assigns 25% of the area for residential uses and 75% of the area for retail uses. And it has some pretty high factors. For residential, it assumes 20 dwelling units per acre. And for retail, it assumes a 0.8 FAR. So that really has affected our overall dwelling unit and job outcomes by having such high factors. And I think Tim referenced that earlier. That may be something we need to discuss tonight, or not. Study Area 23 is Eastern Oroville / Oroville Hills. You chose the city's general plan, although you modified it to include mixed use along Miners Ranch Road. The city's general plan generally calls for a variety of residential densities, primarily higher densities closer to the city itself, becoming lower density in the outskirts areas. There's also some significant mixed use area along Highway 162, that new designation. Some public and resource conservation uses. This would allow about 1,700 new homes and produce about 42,100 jobs. I do want to highlight that something that was not discussed when we discussed the study area at our Oroville meeting. We included an errata memo, but we didn't highlight it during our discussion. And I just wanted to bring it up tonight to make sure that you were all aware that there was an error in the alternatives evaluation report that relates to agriculture. And some people have had expressed concern that that may have affected the outcome of your vote. And so we just want to make sure that you're aware that the scores that were assigned to the study area in the alternatives evaluation report for the alternative that most similarly matches the one that you chose indicated that there was no agricultural land in the study area, and therefore the score was given, it was an A. However, there are significant farmland resources here. There's farmland of statewide importance, unique farmland, and grazing land. And under all of the alternatives, including the one that closely resembles the one you chose, there's a loss of approximately 2,330 acres of agricultural land, or potential loss of that many acres to non-agricultural uses. So I think it's important that you that you're aware of that and think about that.
So the grade becomes what?
The green?
The grade?
Oh, the grade would change to a D. Yeah. Yep. Okay, so Thermalito After Bay area. In this case, you did not choose the city's general plan, which calls for a specific plan for significant development. Instead, you chose alternative 1, which is the, I think, the existing county general plan calling for rural residential and allowing about 100 new homes. Study Area 26 is the Las Plumas Southside Ophir Road study area. Here you did choose the city's general plan. The majority of the study area is in medium density residential, but it also allows some other residential densities, significant areas of retail, again, this new mixed-use designation, some public and resource conservation. At the bottom, you can see this hatched area, which is the South Ophir Specific Plan area. This is out of the city's general plan. The specific plan has not yet been developed, but the general plan does give some kind of general assumptions that there would be about a maximum of 300 acres of industrial at a 0.4 FAR and 1,500 dwelling units. And so we did include those build-out factors in our spreadsheet that we distributed tonight. Study Area 27 is Pacific Heights Road / Highway 70. You chose alternative 2, which is all agriculture. Here again, you did not follow the City of Oroville's general plan, which calls for a specific plan for significant development. Study Area 28 is Southern Oroville. You chose the city's general plan. The majority of this is in rural residential. There's resource conservation along Highway 70. And then in the northern portion, you can see some mixed use and retail. That would allow about 400 new homes in the rural residential area and produce about 4,100 jobs. Study area 24 is Stringtown Mountain. This is the study area that Richard just presented to you. You chose the developer proposal, which is similar to our alternative 3. This would allow very low, medium, and medium-high density residential, as well as the resort and some retail uses. This would allow about 27 new homes and produce about 200 jobs. 2,700 homes, right? Yeah. Okay, study area 29 is Palermo. You chose alternatives 2 and 3, which leaves the majority of this area in agriculture, but does allow some very low density residential closer to town, as well as retail, industrial, and public. This would allow about 400 new homes. This is an increase from what was published in the Alternatives Evaluation Report, which had indicated these alternatives would allow 100, so that's an increase of 300 dwelling units. This alternative would also produce about 550 jobs. In study area 30, which is Bangor, you chose alternative 2, which leaves the majority of the study area in agriculture. And then you did direct us here to redefine the retail designation in the town center. This was one of those examples with the circle that was undefined. So what we've done in this map is identified those parcels that have a commercial use, existing commercial use, according to the assessor parcel data. And so that's what you can see on this map. And I think we're certainly open to hearing your suggestions about how better to map that. But that was kind of our starting point. So now we're going to move into the Biggs and Gridley area. There are 3 study areas that are adjacent to these 2 jurisdictions, study areas 31, 33, and 34. The Biggs area, study area, for this study area you chose alternative 2, which leaves the majority of this area in agriculture, but it does allow some significant industrial area in the northwest part of the city of Biggs, or just adjacent to the northwest part of the city of Biggs. This would produce about 4,400 jobs in that industrial area. In study area 33, which is south of Biggs, you chose alternative 2 as well, which leaves the majority of this in ag. But there's some industrial at that northern end, and then there's industrial retail uses along the railroad tracks. And this would produce about 2,650 jobs. Study area 34 is north of Gridley. You chose alternative 1, which is the existing general plan. The majority of this is agriculture, but there's some very low and medium-high density near the city, and this would allow about 400 new homes. Again, this is slightly different from what was in the Alternatives Evaluation Report, which had indicated the alternative 1 would allow 300 homes, so it's an increase of 100 units. For this Biggs and Gridley area, you did agree at the Oroville meeting that you would consider city plans for these study areas that surround the 2 jurisdictions. I do want to highlight that the city of Gridley did recently select their preferred land use alternative, and they presented you with a map at the Chico meeting that includes, in the study area 34 region, that includes an urban reserve designation, as well as a variety of residential densities, some retail, industrial, and public uses. However, both the cities of Biggs and Gridley have requested that the county designate the area of concern as an urban reserve, which I mentioned earlier. And this urban reserve designation, they would like it to be established in such a way as to prohibit parcelization until the area is annexed by the cities. So I just briefly want to try to go over a few issues of consistency, just point them out to you to consider as you think about reopening study areas tonight. This first bullet is the kind of outer areas in the county, like Forest Ranch and Berry Creek. You're pretty consistent in primarily designating those areas for agriculture or open space. However, with those retail circles that are in those rural areas, you were not as consistent. Basically, Bangor was directed for a redefinition, but Forest Ranch and Berry Creek still have that undefined circle. For specific plan usage, I just wanted to point out that in study area 9 and 6, which are development proposals, you chose a specific plan designation. We also have that for study area 12, the Southeast Paradise specific plan, and study area 26, a portion of it, which is the Las Plumas area, and that's based on the city of Oroville's general plan. So we have some specific plan designations, and then there was a couple other development proposals that were not designated for a specific plan, including Hamlin Canyon and Stringtown Mountain. And finally, with the city-town coordination, there was a somewhat inconsistent way in which the CAC directed growth to happen either by the city or under the county jurisdiction. And so I'll just kind of run through a comparison of those. In the Chico area, for study area 2 and study area 9, the North Chico specific plan area and the Doe Mill area, that would happen under the county auspices. But under study area 3, the Belmure area, that the CAC directed that should happen by the city of Chico. In the Paradise area, the CAC directed that the county would be, the development would happen under the county in the Magalia area, the Skyway Neal Road area, and Lago Vista was designated for no development, so it was less appropriate. But then in study area 11, the Paradise Urban Reserve, and study area 12, the Southeast Paradise Specific Plan, that would happen under the town. In Oroville, the majority of the Oroville study areas, you did direct that those would match the city of Oroville's general plan. However, for Oro Bay and Rio de Oro developments, you did not choose the city's general plan. And finally, with Biggs and Gridley area, you indicated that you're open to discussing the city's plans. And also, something just kind of related to the Oroville general plan, we did add that new designation of mixed use, which came about because of their general plan designations. And so, but we only use that mixed use designation in those study areas that are following the city's general plan. So something you may want to consider is whether you'd want to apply that in other areas as well. So finally, Tim has presented some charts earlier this evening. This is a kind of simplified version which looks at the total county. The bar graph on the chart on the column on the top shows the preferred land use alternative as it stands now, and that is countywide. That includes those 3 city study areas, and this would allow about 70,000 new homes. Compared to the BCAG growth projection in 2030, they project that the total county would allow about 45,000 new homes. And then at the bottom, you can see a standard 2.5% growth rate, as Tim mentioned earlier, and that would allow about 75,000 new homes. And looking at jobs, the preferred land use alternative for only the unincorporated area, because we didn't do any projections for retail or industrial development within the cities, so we only looked at unincorporated areas here. The preferred land use alternative would produce about 114,500 jobs, and that's compared to the Bay Area economics employment projection that Tim discussed earlier, which is about 6,200 jobs. So I just wanted to put that out there. I think as we go through the meeting tonight, we will be updating the figures in our spreadsheets, and we hope to be able to show you the new preferred land use alternative at the end of the meeting, and we'll again compare that to these projections. So I think at this point, we'll open it up to questions and answers of the CAC members before we move on to the members of the public. And we'll start with John.
Can you flip back to the BCAG, the red bars? The bottom section there, the 2.5% growth, flat, a straight line projection over the life of the general plan turns into 75,000 new households, right?
Yeah.
What we're looking at in the preferred land use alternative is what we approved as new designations for residential, plus whatever the assumed capacity was inside incorporated areas.
Yes. Yep.
And what do we have for assumed capacity for existing parcelization in the unincorporated areas?
We didn't include that, and I think that we expect that figure to be relatively small. But we don't have that figure included.
How was it BK came up with something less than the 2.5, and where does 2.5 come from?
2.5 is just a number. I mean, there are. I mean, I think as Tim mentioned in the past, the county has typically grown at 1%. Some people expect that growth rate will increase in the future, and so we wanted to be able to have a kind of another bookend to show you what 2.5% growth looks like, and how that compares to what you've chosen.
Okay, and BK's projection is a 1% growth assumption, or?
I think that's what Tim indicated, that it's approximately an average of 1%.
So just to be clear, preferred land alternative is what we basically tabulated up.
Mm-hmm.
BKEGS is, they're the ones who watch population growth and talk to Sacramento about how we're going to cope with stuff. And then 2.5% is DC&E's notion of, hey, you might want to think about it, or?
Yeah, I think it's a way to put it, yeah. I mean, some people would look at like a 2% growth or a 3% growth. I mean, I think all of those have some validity, and you can make your own decision as to what's most valid. But I think that it's just intended to kind of give you something else to look at other than just the BCAG projection. Let's see, I think.
Yeah, I had a question. Can you go over the urban reserve designation as it applies? Was that just to existing specific plans, or could you explain that part?
Bill, let me just get back to the question on the BCAG numbers. The 2% growth rate, John, is based on the entire county. And for the unincorporated portion of the county would be 1% growth rate. So what you're seeing up there is the entire county, countywide. The BCAG growth projection is 2%. So you're not seeing the 1% for the unincorporated graphically shown.
Now you're confused.
I'm really sorry to do this so early in the evening. BCAG, the geniuses who plan our transportation spending, they've come up with a growth projection that is roughly 2% in the incorporated areas and something else in the unincorporated, or what is BCAG saying the growth is going to be?
Here's a graphic right here.
Total county, 2%.
Right.
Okay.
Unincorporated county, 1.1%.
Okay, so it's a blended thing that slightly less than 2 and more than 1.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then the 2.5% was just kind of for scale.
That's at least just to show as a scale.
Okay.
Right. Not a suggestion, just a
And the
a
very
measure.
first one is the one that we've tabbed up already.
Right.
Okay. Sorry, everybody.
Okay.
I do have
Sorry,
one
Bill.
question.
Yeah, I was just trying to get a better handle on the urban reserve designation, and was that going to apply to those existing specific plans like we saw with Rio de Oro? Is that going to remain urban reserve, or is it going to be redesignated urban reserve until this passes and goes through? I guess that may not be the right example, but could you go ahead with the definition again?
Well, right now, I think that there are several, urban reserve designations throughout the county. Our alternatives includes one existing urban reserve designation, and that's the Paradise Urban Reserve. And I think I don't think that all of the urban reserve designations across the county are exactly the same currently. But I think our intent is that through the update process, we could make those all consistent. So the urban reserve designation in the Paradise Urban Reserve calls for 20-acre parcels for now. And then in the future, if that area is needed for development by the town, it would allow urbanization with adequate services by the town. So the general idea behind an urban reserve designation is to kind of set aside an area for future development when it's needed. The cities of Gridley and Biggs have asked us to use that type of designation to apply for that area of concern, because they see that as a growth area for the future, but they don't want it to be parcelized before they have the opportunity to plan for that growth.
Great. Could I see the chart with the blue bars again? Either just before or just after this?
I think, Emily, did you have a
Thanks.
question?
Yeah, I've had my hand up for a while. I have a question about, it's okay. I have a question about the table here. And it looks like single-family and multifamily new dwelling units were separated out at some point, and 10% of the new dwelling units was designated multifamily. That seems really unrealistically low, realizing that there aren't that many areas in the county that might be suitable for really high density or even medium density development. There are some areas that we've talked about that are, but overall 10%, I just wasn't sure where that came from, and I'm hoping it won't stick.
Well, the reason that we did distinguish between multifamily and single family was primarily for the purposes of our evaluation, for the economics and for basically the economics evaluation that BAE did in the alternatives evaluation report. We needed to have an understanding of what types of units those would be. And so we had to make a very general assumption. And the idea was that for areas that are at low densities, we just assumed those would be single family. But for those that do include some higher densities, we did apply that 10% designation or distribution, and it's we understand that it's a very generalized one. But the idea is that, or our thoughts were that the majority of the development in the county is much more rural than we find in the actual cities. And so based on our experience in other areas, we thought that a 10% figure was appropriate to apply across the board.
I would disagree, but that's okay.
Going to that chart now, the bar on the top, preferred land use alternative, and there are 118 or something thousand jobs is what you're saying, and that's based on a house sort of with the 70,000 that we identified plus the city?
It's actually, that was calculated based on the amount of retail and industrial land that's designated. And so there are actually two assumptions that go into this. The first assumption is changing the number of acres that we've designated for, say, retail development. We need to then determine what that means in terms of actual building square footage for retail uses. And so we applied a floor area ratio of 0.3 to come up with that square footage column in your spreadsheet. And so that's a first assumption that we go through. And then a second assumption is using those figures that Tim had up earlier, which was 450 square feet of retail uses per employee and 750 square feet of industrial square footage per employee. So there's two steps in calculating this, but it is completely based on the area that's designated for retail and industrial uses.
The BAE employment projection, I was going to ask if you just take the purple area and divide appropriately by your square footage, and that gives you a number, right? And is that both in the city and in the county? That's part of it. But the top one is not that. The top one relates to the number of new homes, right? No. The top one is based, we designated as part of these as part of your preferred land use alternative, you have a certain amount of retail and industrial designated land, and that's what determined this top bar. That's what calculated that top bar, and that's only for the unincorporated areas. And the bottom bar is a projection that BAE made in the Setting and Trends report, and that is only also for unincorporated county.
There's a time limit.
I don't understand, but if everybody else does.
Well, on that subject, does that include the total acreage of the area, or does that, as if the whole thing was built wall to wall, as an industrial park?
No, and that's where the floor area ratio comes in, that 0.3. So if you have a 5-acre parcel that's designated for retail, we would then first convert that to square feet by multiplying it by 43,000 560. And then you would multiply that by 0.3, a floor area ratio, and that is what you then apply the jobs factors to.
0.3.
0.3 is the FAR. 30%, yeah. Bruce?
Yeah, it seems to me like your totals for the unincorporated county, and this is dwelling units, seems to be skewed a little bit. Area, the Belmere area, that's 3,000 homes, but it's got to be done under the auspices of the city. So
Well,
how can you put those 3,000 homes in the unincorporated county?
Well, I think we basically we want to be looking at the entire county as a whole, and I think you're right. We could have applied those 3,000 units to the bottom figure rather than there's two totals.
Correct.
And I think that's definitely something we could have done. But in general, we're trying to look at overall county as a whole, because it's not clear when things will and will not be annexed. But I think the Belmere example is something that we could change. John?
Yeah, I think the 0.3 FAR for industrial is pretty rich. I mean, what we're seeing in incorporated areas, just for straight ahead office or industrial is I mean, on an ideal rectangular site under current zoning, and the required landscaping and parking and everything else, you're lucky to get to 0.25, 0.27.
Okay.
You know, it's.
Well, we did those factors were developed in consultation with Bay Area Economics, and just based on our professional judgment. But I can't get into the details myself.
Okay.
Pia?
Just looking at this this chart here, and assuming that the Bay Area Economics has some validity in their assumptions, in my opinion, it seems like we're saturating the market with industrial areas that may never come to fruition, and that can affect the price of the existing industrial. So to me, it would seem like we have to get the numbers sort of in line with projections, so we're able to keep a viable marketplace for and value to the industrial areas that we have, and we don't just encourage sprawl and encourage growth in areas where there may not be the services to provide for that. So in my opinion, we need to cut back on some of these alternatives. And these bars are very good testimony to that, in my opinion.
Okay, Jason?
Before I put all my ducks on these two bars, I think I'm as confused as Bill is. The Bay Area Economic Employment Projection is based on also land, not housing units?
I don't know if the county staff can speak more to this. I don't have BAE's methodology with me for how they calculated the employment projection. They did, I think, BAE...
Because they had it before any of our alternatives went to them, so I don't understand how
Yeah.
they could possibly use our alternatives.
No, they did not use your alternatives. They followed a similar process. BCAG also did an employment projection, but their employment projection was only for the entire county, and that's why we didn't use BCAG's projection. BAE actually went through the same method, but they had figures for unincorporated versus incorporated, and that's why we used BAE's rather than BCAG's. But I think my understanding is that their process was similar to how they projected residential growth through knowledge of the area and through interviews with planners and people familiar with this area.
So you're saying these are apples to apples, even though they didn't have our preferred all-use alternative, including the particular areas of industrial and retail?
I don't think that these are apples to apples in the sense that they were calculated in the same exact manner. We calculated our jobs based on those assumptions that I've gone through. BAE, I think, used a different process to do that, but that's the only projection that we have to work with.
And to actually contradict Pia's. I'm hoping that we can saturate the market in this area. We need the area, so.
What was BKEG's?
Okay, go ahead.
Go ahead,
Bill.
It was just, what was BKEG's projection for the county?
For the entire county, BCAG projects 123,539 jobs, which is what BAE also projected, but BAE had it distributed between the incorporated and unincorporated. Tony?
Yes, I'd just like to make a point that this is the general plan. I see Butte County as a place with great opportunity, all the natural resources we have. And again, everything that we're looking at is just a fraction of the land we have here, folks. You know, I want Butte County to be a land of opportunity, and if somebody wants to come here and invest money, and if we've seen these developments, the developers are bringing with us, and they're beautiful. They're giving us plenty of open space. They're saying, where do you want it? Where do you want us to put it? I just think we really need to focus on, it's a general plan. We're getting tied up in the numbers. We're talking about a fraction of the total land area. I say, let's make Butte County a land of opportunity and give folks an opportunity.
Okay. I kind of agree with them for a few different reasons, in that this is a bone I've had to pick really with the whole process. But because of this, I've taken it all with a grain of salt. These numbers are all maximum build-out, considering numbers like John questioned at 30%. And if every dwelling out there was built as densified as it possibly could, yet even the developers you talk to, most of them are trying to cut the numbers back, saying we're never going to build out that far. And some of these are not even developer-driven. We're just saying, well, if somebody came along and in 30 years maxed out. So almost all these numbers, the jobs and the houses, dwellings, I'm looking at, just like I made the point in the last meeting, Forest Ranch still had numbers from 20 years ago that haven't been built out at all. In fact, I think we adopted the same numbers, and it's still far more than we'll see in the next 30 years. I think what we're picking is zones of opportunity, I think that word was used, and zones of places for people to reside. I'll be around for another 30 years, I hope, and I still don't expect to see any of the numbers that we have up there. We're just kind of picking areas and styles of living and development.
Well, I think that we're a little behind schedule, so if it's okay, I think it would be a great time to move on to public comment. We have a half an hour on the agenda, and Tim's going to facilitate that.
This is the easy part of the agenda, right? Right. Okay, I need a sense of how many folks are wanting to talk.
Hey Tim.
Okay, I'm seeing about 35 hands. Okay.
At some point, can we take a straw poll on how many areas we want to talk about too? Because
yes,
I think there's people.
We were going to do that right after public comment.
Okay.
Right. Okay. All right, we're going to zip through this. Want to be fair to people. I'm going to try to not cut you off. I want to start with the cities, though. In the spirit of city-county cooperation, it's one of our guiding principles. So if I get the cities to come forward first, Steve Peterson, take it away. You've got the mic right here. And talk to the Citizens Advisory Committee.
Tim, could you call up the slide that you had that had the breakdown by cities on the future growth?
Yeah.
Thanks.
Well, I'm going to try a little different approach. So I'm going to keep it moving along. So we're going to average a minute or so is what I'm going to say. So go. Steve.
I'll try to keep it brief. The City of Chico, first of all, I'm Steve Peterson with the Planning Services Department, City of Chico. We provided comments last week. Just a couple points to reiterate. One is that we think it's really important the county partner with the cities on any study areas on the edge or the border of cities, that the planning for those areas should be consistent and seamless with the city's general plan updates. That includes the need to annex to cities. I wanted to point out on the growth numbers that the City of Chico has almost 20,000 additional households to accommodate over the next 20 years. You haven't identified enough study areas for the city to grow into to accommodate that number. A couple other comments. We identified the importance, if you're going to look at Belle Muir, that you add Mud Creek to Belmere as a study area. It's the #1 growth area that the City Council has directed our staff to look at. It provides a natural growth boundary for the Green Line. It fits your urban reserve designation that you have in your plan. So we would ask you to consider that. And then any of the city, county adjacent areas, North Chico specific plan, also the Schuster property, Doe, Honeymill, those areas are adjacent to the city, should be considered for annexation consistent with the city's policies.
Thank you.
Tim, quick question.
I have a question,
Yes.
too.
Jane was here nice enough to threaten us basically with Mud Creek last week. And when is it an opportunity for maybe us as an advisory committee to ask about Mud Creek in Growth Area 1? Is there an
You want to
opportunity?
ask questions like what Mud Creek is?
Or ask for it to be included?
Well, okay, why don't we take the comments, and when we're done with public comments, I'll come back to that, okay? Let's go. Next. Thank you.
I have a question. Can I just ask him a question?
Okay, Georgie, go ahead.
I just have a question. In some of the preliminary drawings that I've seen, where they had the a Schwartz property, maybe possibly a road going across from Highway 99 over to the Skyway, that the business park A that he has on his map. Is that something the city wants us to seriously take a look at, like Belmere, or does it really not care?
We think it should be at least considered as a potential growth area, yes.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Jason, let me answer your question since it's fresh. The board spoke. It was 5-0. They said take it out.
How did the board speak before we as citizens or the community got to speak?
It happened
This is
in
our general plan.
Right. It happened in Workshop Series 2-3. You're going to make a recommendation. The Board of Supervisors is going to decide. So it's going to be your general plan that's recommended to the Board of Supervisors. The board will adopt a general plan. It may or may not be exactly what you recommend. I mean, that's life. And so, and that's the process.
I understand that. Is there a point where we can recommend that, even though they've only recommend what we've given you to recommend or consider?
We recommended it when it went to them.
Right.
We went with all the study areas that here's all the study areas, and they took some out.
And that was one of them.
I understand. They took it out, and then we didn't get to reevaluate that.
Right. I think that the board spoke. I think the gavel's dropped, and now we move on. I think what it says is that we're set up in a conflict with the city. If the city's looking to go one way and the county's looking to go another way, that's going to be an area of conflict. Okay, but we recognize that, and we'll figure it out. Okay.
All right. Good evening. Craig Sanders, City of Oroville. With respect to areas 21 and 26, which is the Thermalito and then the Los Plumas South Side area, we appreciate that the committee recognize the city's land uses, but we do want to make sure that when you get to the policy stage in this, that you include policies to require services and infrastructure that's consistent with the city's requirements, so that when it comes time to annex, we aren't fighting a battle. There is, much like what Steve Peterson said, there will be a seamless ability to integrate those areas with Oroville. Area 23, we question the need for additional density along the Miners Ranch Road corridor. It's out of the city's sphere of influence, and it is, as I mentioned at one point, in the only area where there's an active earthquake fault in Butte County. Area 24, we certainly like the idea of the resort area of Stringtown, but with the additional 2,700 homes out there, that could trip the number in terms of traffic on Olive Highway to turn that over to a 4-lane road, and that would be a very expensive proposition. And then 25 and 27, which was the Rio Doro and Oro Bay, we would also like the urban reserves on those, recognizing that the city would have those as future growth areas. Thank you.
Great.
Question, please.
Oops, question.
I think I understood the point pretty clearly, and as it relates to a decision we're going to try to make this evening for some of the other areas, you're saying that the City of Oroville does not want development going on in the county in your sphere of influence or in areas that you might annex?
No, we're not saying we don't want the development going, but if the development does go, that the the level of service that's required for police, fire, the infrastructure that's required, road standards, street lighting, those types of things are consistent with what the city would require, and that there are maintenance funding mechanisms in place so that when it comes time to annex, we don't have difficulties convincing those people. Yeah.
Craig, right here.
Go ahead, Mike.
Isn't that why you put the specific plan designations on those, to ensure that you'd get the review and the appropriate level of service, and that's why you're supporting them being in the city?
Are you talking about, I'm sorry, are you talking about Rio de Oro?
25 and 27 have the specific plan designations that the city preferred alternative has allowed. And you're saying that you'd like those to be an urban reserve.
Correct.
Because you want them to come into the city, and by having the specific plan requirement, that gives you the insurance that you need that the level of services will be available or there's no project.
Right.
Correct?
Correct.
So by us saying urban reserve and specific plan and in the city, we manage the issues that you're concerned about.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
I just had a short question. You mentioned that if the Stringtown build-out went up to 2,700, that would impact Olive Highway to possibly trip it into 4 lanes. What would you comment on with the 17,000 additional dwelling units in that same area and its impact on Olive Highway and Foothill?
Right. I think that will be analyzed too, and we'll see what the EIR comes up with for that, but that could do it also.
Okay, next. We'll leave the lady to last.
We thought you'd like to hear from Biggs and Gridley together.
Wow. This is
wait a minute, let me sit down.
There we go. So there's no boundary issues there. Pete Carr, City Administrator, City of Biggs.
Andrea Retamonte, the Community Development Director for the City of Gridley.
Really important to both of us for that urban reserve designation. Growth is not just a prosperity issue for us, and particularly on the big side, it's a survival issue for us. We really, the 2.5%, actually, we would welcome much more than that. We can't allow the parcelization, or we certainly don't want to see you allow the parcelization that would prevent our ability to be able to thrive.
And we concur with that sentiment. And this is my presentation is kind of a reiteration of what I said at the last meeting when we were at the Chico CAC meeting, and I gave out a handout of 3 maps that illustrated our growth area, the area of concern, and our preferred land use alternative, and they're all kind of overlapping one area, and I know it gets confusing, which is why I prepared the maps and handed them out at the last meeting. I don't know if everyone brought them back to this meeting, so I prepared them again. It's very important to the city that any land use alternative in this area be consistent with the city's adopted vision and would support the city's ability to implement this vision in the new growth area. Therefore, we feel a county land use designation of urban reserve for our proposed sphere is necessary to promote sensible long-term planning. This area is already in an area of concern, as the map illustrated. Urban reserve designation would be a logical next step in identifying growth areas between the cities of Biggs and Gridley. This designation would also recognize the city's general plan and sphere efforts and specify the next phase of growth for the city of Gridley. We would also hope that the urban reserve designation would address the ag buffer issue that we currently have. And so we are requesting that you reopen consideration of study area 34 and consider a designation of urban reserve.
I think you'll find that both of our general plan update processes result in overlapping planning areas, and eventually there'll need to be some agreement as to exactly the designation between the 2 cities, but that'll be done collaboratively, not combatively.
Quick question, and Andrea? Where, this is the specific plan that you're requesting on behalf of the City of Gridley?
That is the city's preferred land use alternative for the general plan.
Thank you.
I have a question. There was, I think at the meeting that this issue was decided at, there was some mention of resistance either by one or both of your towns to the imposition requirement by the county of a buffer zone between the two annexed areas off in the future. Could you comment on that?
The buffer zone between the cities,
the imposition of some set buffer zone is, in other words, the city's not growing together. Something perhaps more than a golf course separating two incorporated areas.
We're open to discussing the issue and looking for alternatives and perhaps joint uses for a buffer between the two cities, such as open space or parkland or shared facilities.
Yes, and I think what I tried to convey was rather than the county tell us what needs to be between us, we would rather work that out together.
Yeah, I think I heard the words golf course or something like that, which is...
I was thinking of something green.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much. Before we start the public comment, let me just remind people, we have a May 9th Planning Commission meeting a week from Friday, a week from tomorrow. At that Planning Commission meeting, we're planning about an hour and a half of public comment to the Planning Commission. The process is we take the work from this meeting tonight and the 3 previous meetings, and that's what's presented to the Planning Commission next week. So I'm sort of expecting a lot of people that were unhappy with some decisions that have been made or recommendations that have been developed so far are going to come in and kind of give evidence or give information on why the committee should reconsider. And that's fine. But I need you to do it in a really efficient manner so that we're not here till midnight again. I think that we want to be smart with our time. So I understand some people don't want a lot of time for public comment, but I think the public is here and we want to hear from you. So
Kim, we were going to take the vote on... Were we going to do that after public comment? I'm Jason over here.
Thanks, Jason.
We were going to take the public... We were going to take a vote at some point, and I forgot what you said.
After we hear what people are thinking, they're basically going to make their case to you. Then we'll close the public comment. We'll get on with the meeting with you.
Thank you. Sorry.
Jerry Benedict, and I'm speaking on study area number 5. I wasn't at the meeting, so I don't know what transpired to have you designate that area as alternative 3, which would allow 400 new homes. So I don't know what that was based on. It is kind of shocking to me. I also think that possibly it would be good to look at that area once again, maybe this evening, and think of the urban reserve designation for that alternative area. So maybe you could reopen that this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Citizen Jack?
Jack Slota, resident of Gridley. I'm here to support the comments made by the representatives from Biggs and Gridley, that the area be designated urban reserve. It has already been designated as a growth area by LAFCO. And secondly, would support the removal of the ag buffer requirement within that projected growth area. I've been involved in a couple projects that have attempted to define that and to use it when development occurs, and it's a nightmare. So in areas like the area of concern where growth will occur, would ask that the ag buffer not apply. Thank you.
Mike?
Good evening again. My name is Mike McLaughlin. I'm a Paradise resident. I would like to see the committee reconsider your vote on study area 10 for this reason. Ridge residents in August will be presenting to this committee as well as planning and to the Board of Supervisors the guidelines for a rather detailed scenic corridor element that will incorporate the Skyway and its corridors between Paradise and the bottom of the hill. In August will be about 3 or 4 weeks late in terms of the Board of Supervisors having made its final decision, as Tim has said earlier, brought down the gavel on its alternatives. If the board agrees to an alternative 2 or 3 on 10, it's going to lead to conflict. And unfortunately, the way that the process has worked, the tail has been wagging the dog, and we would like to have the opportunity to present something without having to work around an already stated and planned on and agreed to development. The developments can certainly come in along the Skyway once we have the guidelines agreed to as to what comprises a scenic corridor. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me,
Sir?
can you answer a question?
Question.
Can you be brief but specific? Kent Fowler over here.
I'm sorry.
Can you be brief but specific on what you think that conflict is?
Oh, me? Yes. I think that if the Board of Supervisors, I think that if the Board of Supervisors votes, for instance, for an alternative 3, say, for study area 10, that I think our ability to successfully, and I may be wrong, but I think it's much more difficult for us to come about with a comprehensive scenic corridor element that should take precedence over development issues. And I just see some conflict here. It's not going to be a pretty picture, perhaps. Go ahead.
Yeah, when you started your comment, you said you wanted us to revisit Study Area 10. What do you want us to do with it?
I would like, I'm sorry. Yes, I would like you to reconsider it and bring it back to an alternative 1 for the entire area. I believe you had an alternative 1 for the Study Area 10 with the exception of the Tuscan Ridge Golf Course.
Well, actually, there was 9 votes for alternative 1, 6
Yeah,
for
right.
for the
But
165,
the majority,
6 for the 50. I think that the recommendation is going to be no alternative recommended on this one.
Yeah.
Well, we'll find out.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
very
you.
much. Jim?
I'm Jim Bishop from the East Orville Foothills. I address here the agricultural lands of Area 23. Principle number 8, guiding the plan, says the general plan shall address agriculture as an important aspect of Butte County's economy that will be protected, maintained, promoted, and enhanced. Area 23 farmlands are long established, very productive orchards, vineyards, and gardens with historic farm buildings, many small commercial operations, and they're absolutely unique in our region geographically. They are important to our economy, not just for food production, but for also enhancing tourism and the quality of the entire community. The next 20 years will bring nothing but ever-increasing transportation costs, which favors the retention of local food production, while focusing population can be best served by public transportation. It's very short-sighted to sacrifice irreplaceable local farmlands to intense subdivision. The farmland represents a relatively small fraction of the total area, but a very valuable fraction. And in giving up the agricultural capacity for a few more homes, you gain a trivial percentage increase in residential space while giving away enormous percentage of these key agricultural lands. The right balance favors the retention of the very limited but very valuable ag lands. So please, I ask in your reconsideration of Area 23 that you follow the principle to protect, maintain, promote, and enhance the agricultural lands, especially the unique farmlands that lie within Area 23, designating them fully as such, agricultural lands, and all of the alternatives, regardless of any arbitrary lines such as influence boundaries and so on, and in the end, choose an alternative that preserves the agriculture. Thank you.
Thank you. Barbara?
I'm Barbara Hennigan, and I'm glad to see that you actually put most of the housing in the area where most of the water is. This is a map, a graph showing the streams crossing Butte County. And over here we have Big Chico Creek and Butte Creek, which are considered the largest source of water for the city of Chico and for Durham. Now, in your calculations, you haven't added the extra water that will be used by the city of Chico. So I think it's really important that you look at exactly how much water is available for what you are thinking about building. I also, to save time, handed you this one. It's on your, at your tables. And essentially that shows you the 3 kinds of aquifers that we're dealing with in Butte County. Up in Paradise, we have what's called fractured rock aquifer. And in the area of Placer County, they did some research and discovered that in a fractured rock aquifer, approximately 1% of the volume is fractures, and that's where the water is. So they could determine exactly how much water storage they had. They were pleased to discover they had enough water in the area that they studied for 24 more new homes. They were distressed to discover that there were 150 homes already permitted. The second aquifer I'd like you to look at is the shallow aquifer, and that's on the valley floor, and that's where rain falls and filters through the ground. Most of the domestic wells in the county are in the shallow or alluvial aquifer. When people in agriculture talk about recharging the aquifer, they're talking about recharging the shallow aquifer. The third aquifer is the notorious Lower Tuscan.
15 seconds. Go ahead.
15.
Wrap it up.
Okay. The Lower Tuscan recharges over here. We don't know what the recharge actually is. We don't know what that rate is. But we do know that the municipal wells go down to the Lower Tuscan. Most of the ag wells go to the Lower Tuscan. And industrial wells. For example, the golf courses.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Good evening. I'm Roger Cutler from Berry Creek. I'm the chair of the Berry Creek Community Association Executive Council, and two of my fellow elected council members have joined me this evening. I'm here to ask for you to reconsider Study Area 8. You selected Alternative 2. I was at your meeting at Checkers Restaurant. I was asked if I had a preference, and I could not give you one. We have gone back, we have met as an executive council, and I bring before you tonight Alternative 4. And it represents the consensus of the elected leadership in Berry Creek. It was sent out by email, and it's also included in your packet that has the colorful map sticking out of it. And it's designated as B.4.II. Quickly, have any of you been able to read any of this document? A couple of you, thank you. Then let me quickly summarize. We have two requests. The first is that you redefine the study area to the natural boundaries of Berry Creek using the two forks, the Middle Fork and the North Fork of the Feather River. And we actually run all the way up to the county line, as this map shows you. But the top half of that is all Forest Service land. There is another county agency that's designated Berry Creek, and that's the Berry Creek Fire Safe Council. And we ask that you use those same boundaries for us. The other thing we ask is that we recommend that future zoning and development utilize the designation of rural residential, 5 acres to 40 acres or more, for properties to be developed for residential use. Other lands not suited to residential development should be designated timber and/or agriculture as appropriate. Furthermore, we recommend that up to 20 acres be designated for retail commercial use to be dispersed in parcels distributed along the two major thoroughfares, Oro Quincy Highway and Bald Rock Road, and another 50 acres or more be set aside for public uses, parks, athletic fields, a community center building, and other such public facilities. By recommending Alternative 4, you will be enfranchising the people of Berry Creek to be able to sit at the table and discuss our future. Please do that for us. We don't have anyone from Berry Creek sitting on this committee, so we have to rely on you to represent us. Please do that tonight. Thank you.
Do the majority of the people in Berry Creek support that?
We do not. We have a town meeting coming May 10. I'm sure that there are individuals who have varying opinions. What this does is give us something to go to our community with, to discuss, and we know that when it goes to planning and to the Board of Supervisors, there will be options or opportunities for us to modify based on other input that we get from other citizens. To the best of our ability, we were elected to represent the community, and based on what we heard at the meeting that this group sponsored at the school up there, this is why we are putting forward alternative 4.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, next.
I have a question for Mr. Cutter, please.
Yes.
Over here.
Go ahead, Mike.
You're not a municipal advisory council. You've discussed entertaining that process. You haven't reached consensus that that's what Berry Creek wants to do. What did you call your group currently?
We are the Berry Creek Community Association,
Okay.
BCCA.
What's your membership?
The association is all of the residents and landowners of the 95916 zip code.
It's about how many people?
3,500 to 7,000, depending on who you talk to.
How many of them voted for your group to continue and represent yourselves like
I
this?
don't have those numbers. It was a publicized election, and we've been serving in this capacity for a year now.
That's great. I'm not picking on you. I'm just trying to understand that you're making some strides for yourselves, and I absolutely support that you want to take control of your own area. I really do. Do you envision the public designations being on some particular privately owned or currently publicly owned parcels?
I can't answer that.
Same with the commercial. Do you have some specific existing uses or
There are
specific
existing
parcels
uses.
that you
There
would
are
prefer?
existing parcels that would be included in that up to 20 acres that we're suggesting for the area, yes.
That's all for now. Thanks.
Thank you very much.
This, just to clarify, this advisory committee is one of 2 that are recognized by the Board of Supervisors, the other one being in Palermo.
Upper Ridge also.
Pardon me?
Upper Ridge also.
Okay, I guess I'm corrected. The Upper Ridge also?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. Okay, next.
Hello, my name is Robert Friedman, and I'm a resident of Area 23. And, food prices and the environment are front page in the news these days. And I would like to acknowledge that the CAC has a great responsibility, and we all appreciate your effort and your time that you're devoting to helping to craft the general plan. But with regard to the oversight of ag lands in Area 23, I am suggesting that additional consideration by the CAC needs to take place. The majority of small farmers in our area, in Area 23, do not support the recommendation that was made by the CAC. And what we would like to see is further consideration of the ag lands and a specific recommendation regarding small farmers and lands of small farm lands of importance. I live on Mount Ida Road, and of course, as a small farmer, I'm concerned about zoning, future zoning in that area. I'm pro-growth, reasonable growth, and I think that the Miners Ranch Road corridor is absolutely appropriate for business and mixed use. But some of these other areas, including the small farms, need to be really well thought out and preserved for the future, because they do serve an economic purpose to the area as well as an aesthetic purpose. So I'd ask you again to please reconsider your recommendation and pay attention to the voices that you'll hear today and who have submitted letters of support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Did you have another recommendation other than the one we had already made?
Well, it seems to me that 18,400 homes in this area is a lot. And because of the oversight and the omission of the areas of importance, I think that this needs to be reconsidered by your committee. And, I mean, if you're asking for a specific recommendation, I think there are certain areas of Area 23 where zoning shouldn't be AR, should maybe be AR1 or some other type of zoning that preserves the integrity of the existing small farms and recognizes the importance of those lands.
Thank you.
Okay.
Before you take off, what are you farming up there, and what size?
I have a couple of acres, and I farm oranges.
Oranges?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I sell those oranges at the Chico Farmers Market, and I think anybody who visits the market in, from December through March will tell you that they love Oroville oranges, and specifically the oranges that I grow. I mean, and you know, the Butte County Farm Trail, Passport Weekend. I mean, there's a lot of things that are going on that were not recognized in the plan. So if you could please reconsider that, it would be appreciated.
Okay, next. Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Jean Checky, and I'm owner of a small winery and vineyard in Area 23. We've been there over 10 years developing the vineyard and building the winery tasting room business. I just want to say every weekend we get people in there, and a lot of them are from Chico, and they say, we never knew Oroville had such beautiful properties and areas like this. They just don't recognize it, that it's there. And properties such as ours that bring people in help people recognize the value of having such beautiful agricultural land. One thing I'd like to emphasize the uniqueness of these areas. Butte County Farms has hosted, this will be the 3rd annual Sierra Oro Farm Trail Passport Weekend. Brings in a lot of people from other communities. It helps educate people about farming and how people have a different lifestyle than city people, and educates them as to where their food comes from, gives them pride in their local area also. And it also brings money to the community while maintaining an agricultural setting. I'd like to ask the committee to review that area that's all of a sudden changes the unique farmlands into no farmlands in Area 23, and recognize that there are places like ours that bring people in and generate income and generate interest in local farming and local products. We have a good thing going out there, and I would hate to see it destroyed by opening the door to heavy development in that area, which would totally destroy the atmosphere.
Question, if you please.
Yeah.
How would those of you who are speaking on behalf of Area 23 want us to recraft a motion? What would you want that motion or alternative to read?
As I understand it, as the reading was originally, there was 880 acres of unique farmland, 65 acres of statewide importance, and 1,465 acres of grazing land. And all of a sudden that wording was changed to there are no farms of importance in Area 23. Now that's obviously either an oversight, an error, and if it doesn't get corrected, it opens the door to lots of things that could destroy that area as it is.
Gene, I have a question for you
Yes.
here. How much sales tax do you guys pay the county for your operation on an annual basis?
Guys tend to keep those numbers in their head, but I don't know. I don't have that number in my head, but we do
you
generate.
estimate it? Is it $1,000 a year?
It's more than $1,000 a year.
I would think so.
Maybe 10, maybe more than that,
Okay.
probably.
We've had several speakers talk about Area 23, and I think to save some time, I want to just take 1 second to remind people that the City of Oroville's preferred alternative was chosen. In the City of Oroville's preferred alternative, the sphere of influence is moved out of your area and down the hill. What that does is that brings back into play the ag setback buffers. Your properties are being downzoned from 6 units to the acre, 4 to 6 units to the acre, to rural residential, which are 5-acre parcels. So it sounds to me like there's, and we dealt with this in the city discussion, changing you and going down was actually going to produce the result you wanted, which was less new subdivisions. That's what we're recommending occurs. So I'm having some difficulty tracking. I recognize your concern about this designation, and I think that designation has brought up a fear that there's going to be rampant subdivisions go through your area. If the city's preferred alternative is adhered to, you're going to move out of the sphere of influence with the city, which means the ag setback buffers are going to be substantially affecting subdivision of most of the small parcels that are there, which they can't do because it's all going to be 5-acre designations. So I'm thinking that the result that you want is the preferred alternative that we're suggesting. So when we get to Area 23, let's make sure that everybody's clear about that, because I think you're getting what you want.
Okay, but all I can think of are places like the Grand Canyon and stuff that all of a sudden, if language is taking out that might protect somehow in the future, it seems like a lot of people just think of, well, it's not going to happen in my lifetime. But we have to think of future generations and what we're leaving for them. We can't just think of ourselves and, figure it's not in our lifetime. So I think it's something that the wording needs to be somewhere in there, because I also heard them say that if the farm ag land acreage is increased, it changes some grade that you guys give it, and I haven't been following everything.
Grade's
to the
just
T,
a way to look at it. It
Okay.
means nothing.
Okay. But we just
I
want
would
everybody...
reiterate what Mike has already said about the area.
Mhm.
I live in Area 23 also.
Mhm.
There's not going to be any change in my area. You live just across 162, or that the area that you're talking about,
Mhm.
which is, there's a change in density there, slightly, but I think what Mike said still applies there.
Well, that would be the best news I've heard tonight. If
And
our
the-
fear is
and
unfounded,
the Mount Ida
that's great.
orange guy stays the same.
Mhm.
And there's oranges across the street from me that stays the same.
Great.
Hey, Gene, for your own publicity, would you let the group know your wine label?
Who's speaking? Oh, am I allowed to do that? Gray
Of
Fox
course.
Vineyard.
He asked you to.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Can I ask, is anyone else from Area 23 in line there? Good. Let's get the 23 people up front. Come on up, 23.
Okay, I'm Jane Warmack, and I live on Gray Fox Lane off of Mount Ida Road, and I've lived there for 50 years. And I won't be redundant in everything that has been said before me, so you don't have to listen to it twice. I'm in agreement with that. My concern has always been the leapfrogging of residential areas that are dense. We have developments beyond us and around us, and I'm concerned that if the density increases, that it squeezes in the agriculture. People, families have had 4-H, children in 4-H projects with animals, and if you get too much density in housing, then you squeeze out those opportunities, because dense housing doesn't like animals around, and they tend to push agriculture out. So I would like your concern about what the previous speakers have said. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, for 23.
Scott Perkins. I'm a resident of Oroville. I also have land and represent other landowners on the east side, on the east side and the south side of Study Area 23. My first quick comment was just to hit it right here home with Tony. It was a beautiful comment about economics, and it's okay to have too much, and we may not absorb it all, but giving the area a land of opportunity is really what we're all about. Study Area 23, I think Mike hit it right on the head. There was a lot of discussions. The board designated the area to be expanded, to recognize getting around Oroville with some bypass roads. And as an owner out in the area, I'd like to look directly at fellow owners in that area. We're not changing it. We're simply just adding. We're consistent with the City of Oroville's general plan, and we're consistent with pretty much the existing zoning. We're just adding some commercial corridor, some mixed-use corridor, which was my recommendation, and that was what I was pushing as part of some land that I represent, so that because we know that it's going to be viable as Oroville develops down in the urban core, getting around Oroville, getting to the lake. It's economically sustainable, and there is appropriate land out in Study Area 23, both in the south and in the east side, for agriculture. And there's also some that isn't, and I represent some that is, and I represent some that isn't. But I think there's probably an unfounded anxiety here that nothing's changing. Yeah, the 18,000 numbers, we all recognize that that's probably not realistic. But the realism is that there is some economic viability over there, both with agricultural and with residential and with commercial, mixed use, what have you, whatever buzzword. The final thing that I want to talk about was something that we didn't really get to in great detail at Oroville's meeting, just because of the limited time frame with public comment. There's an existing pending project that I represent on the southeast, well, it's really on the south edge of Study Area 23. It's called the Verses Place Project. And you'll see on the map, you can flip over back and forth there. The back side of the map is an exhibit from Oroville's general plan. the front sign is exhibit from our Butte County General Plan. You can kind of
15 seconds.
correlate the two together. You can see the boundary adjustment for the sphere on the east side. You can see that the city of Orville is not inside study area 23 at the south and regarding the Verses Place project. It's a pending project. It will happen before the general plan is done, and to have this conservation overlay on it is inconsistent, and we will have a general plan that will have a non-conforming use forever because the project is happening now. Thank you.
Next, Bert.
I'm Bert Garland. I'm with Area 19, and you may not remember it. Some of you were gone last time. The meeting was going to about 11 o'clock. We were the last one at quarter to 11. The first part is I've given you a detailed package. I hope you got a chance to look at it. It has some maps. During that meeting, 2 hours earlier, Area 19, if you haven't found it, is the southeast corner of Durham, Penn, Highway 99. It's a project that has a little better maps now than you had before. During that meeting about 2 hours earlier, you approved Area 15 for industrial and open space, which is on the other side of the Durham-Pence Highway, the northeast corner of that intersection. It seems only consistent that you reconsider the project that we didn't have enough time for because the videotape guys ran out of tape and they couldn't find the map last time. So first part of my request is just please reconsider that tonight. We'll be here to answer questions. It's rather in-depth. This is approximately a 2-mile frontage of the east side of Highway 99 after the 149 intersection, and it runs to Durham-Pence. If you plan growth in this area, you'll have landscaped terrain, and it'll be a very nice entrance to this city environment. If you only approve a development on one side of the street, typically only one side of the street gets improved. So if you want a consistent overpass, you want a consistent highway, it's good to have all areas of that intersection zoned properly. For 20 years, 20 years, 2 of the corners of that intersection have been M1 and thriving with over 500 jobs. You just approved the third one at the last meeting. We're asking you to make the 4th corner of that intersection consistent with everything else. It'll create more than 1,000 jobs. And I'll be here later to answer questions.
Thank you. Sir, I'd just like to make a comment that right here, that you were actually one of the lucky ones that your packet was one of the very few packets we received on the Saturday in the mail before the Thursday meeting. So we actually had more time to read your proposal than we did almost any other proposal that came before us that night. So if you think you get the short shift, you also or whatever the term, you also got one of the best benefits for us having received the packet in the mail.
Thank you.
Okay. I'd just like to comment back on that. Really, we were about 6 or 7 short by the time we got to the end of that last meeting because people left. We saw the same thing happen the meeting before when issues of less importance were placed before the really important one as far as Gridley and Biggs. They were dead last. And we had people leave before that vote also, including the abstainers on some of these votes, where I don't think we're given the benefit to those people that are concerned to be here and show us time and time again, bring all the materials in and show us. I don't think we're helping them the way that we should, and we're not giving ourselves the best effort as a group when we have people just get up and leave and they're not there to be counted.
Scott?
This is a question for Tanya. Tanya, what was the actual vote on parcel number 19? How many people were actually still there and voting?
There were 19 people there.
Okay.
13 to 6.
So 5 people had gone home.
6 people.
13 to 6.
25. Well, there's a vote in here earlier.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, you'll have a chance to decide what you want to do, but next. Former CAC member. We booted him out. He was causing too much trouble on the... No.
Hello.
I didn't get to vote to boot him out.
I just wanted to explain why I'm on this side tonight. I'm was appointed director of the Butte County Resource Conservation District, and I made the choice to stay with the Resource Conservation District.
Wrong choice. Wrong choice.
It's Pia's fault. I would like you to reconsider study areas 10 because I think we were inconsistent and we didn't put any kind of underlay under the golf course. I'd like you to reconsider study area 15 because I don't think a remote research park really makes sense in $4 a gallon gasoline. And I talked to a few of my friends that work at Chico State, and I think Scott can talk more to this. They were horrified at the idea that they might be in a remote research park, they were like, not me. And then I'd like you to reconsider study area 23 for the very reasons that everybody already said. I personally didn't know there were areas of unique farmland there, and I would have voted differently had I known. And just whatever your vote, I trust your vote. Just maybe reconsider it. And we need to put, we never put an underlying designation under study area 24, the marina and the tourism, the park on the lake. It needs an underlying designation to be consistent, and Tanya already said that. And that's it. Thank you very much. It was an honor and pleasure to serve with you, and I know you will represent me, and I will get to go home before you.
Thanks, Doug, very much. Dylan. Come on over.
Good evening. My name is Dylan Paul, and I'm here to thank you for voting in favor of Study Area 15 last week, and I'm asking you to not open it for rediscussion tonight. As you all know, Butte College has around 13,000 to 14,000 students that come out here. There's 800 faculty staff, and the reason we continually have meetings out here is, well, it's great neutral ground in the county. So it's an area that has a wonderful potential to showcase natural resources, water recharge areas. These are all things that a research facility can actually bring funding into the county and showcase. It can showcase the beauty of this region. I would like to say that the map up here earlier was 1,800 acres. You have designated 400 acres, so it's a really small amount of that area that would actually be considered. We've also shifted it along Durham-Pence where there are rolling hills. We're not really looking at we've strongly considered your recommendations, and we don't want to impede viewshed from 99, so we're working with you. I think that we can find a great place for this out here and really give back to the region. So once again, just if you would continue to work with us, I'm sure we can find a neutral area that all the educational entities will actually support in the end, along with public and private. Thank you.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. First, I want to thank all of you folks for volunteering your time. You put a lot of time in. You're not off the hook. I'm sure this is going to continue for the next 2 years. Yeah. I want to talk quickly about jobs in the research and development, research and business park idea. I served for 10 years on the Butte County Economic Development Corporation, during which time we did both the county job plan and the research and business park element, both of which were received well and adopted by the board. I've served for 20 years with Chico Economic Planning Corporation and now director of Chamber of Commerce. The consistent theme in all that is jobs. How do we create industry? How do we create an environment that encourages private investment to create the kinds of jobs that are suitable for our community, not only now, but for the next 20 and 30 years? The research and business park concept is a difficult thing to understand. I didn't understand it fully until I went on tours of some of these business parks. And for a community that's trying to position itself for environmental research, science, and tech and software, those folks don't locate in an industrial park. They require gracious use of the land, 10-acre sites with maybe a 10% FAR, and the ideal site that was designated by the board 10 years ago, whenever it was, is the parcel 14, the study area 14. So I would encourage, I wish there was an opportunity to provide the group additional helpful information on business and research parks, what they look like, kind of opportunity they present for a community. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about that. I would encourage you to take a look at the site that's already designated that in the county's plan on parcel 14. Thank you for your time.
Mr. Broward, I have a question.
Yes.
You said that you developed the research and business park element. Do you mean the zoning designation?
The zoning designation. That's all. That's what it ended up being, pending a general plan update, which several years later, now we're in that process. But there's a lot of good information in that designation as well.
I'm very aware of that, and I'll bet you there's only 2 other people on this panel that know we even have a business and research park zoning. And just for the benefit of anybody, if I'm wrong, it calls for a 200-acre minimum.
Right.
It calls for a, this is out of the zoning code, by the way. It calls for a maximum build out. I believe it was only 10% of the land is allowed to be built out.
Right.
It calls for avoidance of any biological resources. It is 6 pages. It is one of the lengthier zoning code excerpts. And I share your concern that we should find a place to actually implement this zone. End
Other
editorial.
questions? Other questions?
Yeah.
Scott?
Bill, do you agree with Mike's statement about this definition of research park zoning is the one that we need to work with in order to identify an appropriate area?
I think first it helps if there's a uniform understanding of what it is you're entertaining. I do think that elevates the dialogue, and I think there's a lot of misconception. I could tell that from some of the questions that were coming back at the last meeting.
Then, Tim, maybe it's appropriate when Michael, when would you think it would be appropriate to get into deeper discussion of what research park zoning actually involves and what it would be, and which area might most appropriately be designated for a research park?
Well, that's up to the group to decide, but for me it would be all of the ones that proposed it should be looked at, and we should decide if those are the kinds of things that we understand what a research park is. And if it's similar to that designation, then we should talk about it at each of those areas.
Okay. Okay, next.
My name is Bob Cromer from Chico. A number of times I've spoken on the Belmure area as kind of a quasi-representative for the Belmure residents. Tonight I'm just speaking on my own. I wanted to thank you for your support, recognizing the urbanization and the in and around the Belmure area, and for that your alternative for support. Growth near and existing the city boundaries I think is very important in a time of $4 gasoline, God help, maybe going to $5. My concern is that this support also includes your comment that it only occurs after annexation or in close cooperation with the city. I ask you to remove or adjust this condition. Since 1980, when the Green Line was formed, there have started a process of discussions between the county and the city and the Belmure residents. Dating back to '87, there have been meetings, discussions, more discussions, memos of agreement, back and forth, city pointing to the county pointing to the city, saying it's their job, and here we are 21 years later, and basically nothing's happened. And my fear is that with the recommendation that it only occurs after annexation or in close cooperation with the city of Chico, that 21 years from now we might still be here on the exact same situation. A couple of points I'd just like to make that in Belmure already, through past zoning practices, roughly a third of the property is already 1 acre or less. 70% of the property is already below 3 acres. So to have it called out as Ag 5 acre doesn't really make a lot of sense. We have notes from the Farm Bureau, the city's own comments say it's basically not really viable ag land. The dirt underneath our feet might be good dirt, but you can't really farm it when there's kids swimming in a swimming pool 20 feet away. So there's some big issues there. You have seen a couple of petitions, and I think this came up after I left, so if I'm repeating myself, I apologize. There was one with about 50 signatures on it from parcel owners inside Belmure. There was another one with about 130 signatures on it, of which there's about 10 or 12 people who actually live in the Belmure area. The rest of them are all neighbors. They love having open space near their house where they can go walk their dog, go bird watching, ride their bikes, do all kinds of stuff. That's nice, but I don't think it's right to impose open space park-like settings on the Belmure residents so the neighborhoods can enjoy having that open space there. And I would ask you to consider that.
15 seconds.
Thank you. So my actual comment would be I would encourage you to continue to support Alternative 2, but to take out the mandatory annexation and or close cooperation with the city of Chico, because concern is that that has been going on for 21 years and we've gotten basically nowhere, even though we've done the studies they've asked for, paid for by the residents. Thank you very much.
Excuse me, Bob. I was looking at the tape earlier, right here, sorry.
Yes, sorry.
And you were repeatedly asked whether the citizens that you spoke with in that area would favor annexation, and you repeatedly said yes. It was, as you put it, assumed that that would be an inevitable result. You're changing your view, Mal?
I believe that the annexation process probably will be a result that's going to have to happen. My concern is that if we make it a recommendation from the CAC that Alternative 2 cannot exist unless annexation goes on, we could get into another political, bureaucratic stalemate for years and years and years. If Alternative 2, without the comment, is endorsed by the CAC, at least there is some set known basis of what's going to happen in the region, and we would strongly encourage this county and the city to continue to work together, and we will work with them to do the best thing, to bring in the services, and if that requires annexation, that's not a problem. The residents would approve it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. How many more people that are sitting down still want to speak? If I could get you to get in line because we want to bring this part to a close. Scott, come on.
My name's Scott Wyckoff. I represent the property owner of Study Area 13, which is South Paradise, Penns Road. And that consists of the entire study area. It's 330 acres. We have a concern about some of the information that was discussed regarding this parcel or parcels in the last meeting when the decision was made, and would ask that it be reopened and looked at. Alternative 1 was the alternative that was selected, which makes the entire parcel resource conservation. And our concern is that the existing land use for this study area is a residential land use in the county's general plan, agricultural residential. There was a tentative map that was approved on this site in the 80s, and so over 30 years that had a residential land use designation and a residential zoning. It was stated that it was not in the sphere of influence of the City of Paradise, but it is. It's in the sphere of influence of the City of Paradise, and the City of Paradise's general plan also has a residential land use for this property. The first phase of that map was Lago Vista. I have a typo in my thing. I called it Vista de Lagos here. But Lago Vista was the first phase of that old map that was approved and was actually built and constructed. The balance of that, which is the property which we now own, was never constructed or built. I also wanted to reiterate that this is in the boundaries of a water district that currently exists. There is water issues there, but we feel like our project can help solve those by completing the interconnect or participating in the completion of that interconnect that unites the Del Oro Water District and the Lime Saddle Water District area. Also, there was mention of cultural resources. We have all the known cultural resources we've had identified, and our project currently avoids all of those known sites, and additional studies will be done as we continue. Our current property owners purchased land 3 years ago with the understanding that these designations were going to remain in place. We worked with the county, and for 3 years we've been doing wet season groundwater monitoring. And that wet season groundwater monitoring is determined that it is feasible. We just met with the Regional Water Quality Control Board last week and with County Health Department that it is feasible to do an on-site system there. There are some areas in the 330 acres where there's very shallow soil. There's other areas that has 18 to 20 feet of soil. And so there's plenty of land for an on-site wastewater system, which is another issue that was addressed.
15 seconds.
Okay. So we just hope for your appreciation. One more thing real quick. We have tried to meet with the community and have on several times, and Ms. Seropian has been very gracious. She makes me cookies every time. Even if we don't agree, she makes me cookies, and we have a great time meeting with her and the neighbors, and she's a great host, and I appreciate very much her participation with us. One of the concerns the community had was access on Lago Vista. So we went with the neighboring property owner, this was 2 years ago, and negotiated a lot line adjustments that just went through the end of 2007 so that we can now have a primary access that goes directly to Pence Road to minimize the impacts on the residents at Lago Vista, as well as some buffer zones and other things. So I just want you to be aware that this is property that's been designated for over 30 years for development. It's in the sphere of influence. It's in a water district. There are constraints upon it, but they can be mitigated through our design and by avoiding wetlands and avoiding cultural resources. And
time's up.
Okay, thank you. So I appreciate if you could reconsider an alternative 3 so we can just maintain what we already have as our land use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name's Jim Lauer. I'm the head golf coach now at Butte College. Was a baseball coach for 15 years. My 12th year as the golf coach. And I wanted to speak on behalf of Tuscan Ridge. It's just amazing what Tuscan Ridge has done for our development with our golfers this year. They've allowed us to practice out there 2, sometimes 3 times a week, which was well and above the call of duty. And even on weekends when kids were done with their homework, they allowed them to come out, play a few holes, practice, whatever. They were very accommodating. In a time that we're looking to have a viable golf program, Tuscan Ridge has just totally stepped forward and allowed those youngsters not only the opportunity to golf, but the opportunity to work at a golf course as well. And you know, it just makes me happy to know there's people out there willing to support the college teams, as you see that kind of declining over the years, especially here locally with the monies. So I encourage you to let them support the houses and whatever they have to do to be a viable asset to this community, because for Butte College and this golf team and the young men and women that play here, they've just been an outstanding focus for us and helped in many, many ways. And I'd hate to see that lost, because it's my children, your children, and all of our students. And I ask you again to please help them be a viable asset of this community, because it's very important to us. Thanks.
Thank you. Next.
Hello, my name is Manuel Rivera. I am Chicano Latino activist, and I got a couple questions for the Butte County government. Number one is, do you have any plan for the farmer workers? Because I went to the farmer workers, they have better life and fair wages, you know, in the future. Now the increasing, the living cost is very hard for these farmer workers to pay bills, you know, is the one they make. And when they're talking about better lives, they are exposed to inhaled pesticides, chemicals, and the problem is when they go home, they transfer it to his wife and babies, you know, and now cost for everybody, you know, because after that we need to pay medical attention, and most of the time these farmer workers, they don't have it. So my petition is maybe Butte County government, they can working together with the state and federal to create a better life and better, fair wages, and also I don't know who's going to pay medical insurance for these farmer workers between the farmers and the government, because they need it. And also to increasing the agriculture area to produce more vegetables. In the beginning, the speaker, she's talking about how many jobs there are increasing in Butte College and how many jobs we lost. So the farmer workers, there are lasting jobs, because we have a lot of areas, they have only prunes. And prunes, we don't need it very serious. We need more like tomatoes, strawberries, lettuce. That one is important. You know, we need nutrition. So I think we need to produce more vegetables in Butte County than prunes. I don't know, they can working together. Please take in my considerations, and I really apologize. I still have very strong accent. But you know, by the way, I am Navajo, Mexican, and American, so I still working. Thank you very much. You have a good day.
Thank you.
I think this gentleman makes a good point as to the need for adequate multifamily housing in the county areas. Thanks.
Okay. And reminder, in workshop series 7 or 6, when we do the housing element, we will address farm worker housing and a variety of types of housing, multifamily, though you're right. Yes.
Tim, may I add something to
Yes.
I don't know if I can quite reach here. I think that, and thank you, sir, for those comments. I think they're really valued. I do feel that being in agriculture, as our community is, and having mixed use in some of the agricultural lands on the edges, and having clustered developments with room for our farm hands, I had a lot of trouble finding affordable homes for our employees several years ago. And I think that that's a viable concern, a real concern that I'd like to speak to at this committee. And I also would like to encourage us to consider certified organic buffer zones between industrial ag and home dwellings. Thank you.
Okay, next.
Thank you. My name is Alan Harthorne, and I'm Executive Director of the Friends of Butte Creek, and I'm relatively new to this process, but I'm a little disturbed by some of the alternatives that have been selected, and I just want to let you know that we have another excellent run of spring run salmon returning to Butte Creek this year, which may come as a bit of a surprise with all the news of the tremendous declines in the salmon populations on the West Coast. The thing to keep in mind is that Butte Creek fish are all naturally spawned in the creek, and they live their entire lives in the creek. They never see a hatchery, they never see a truck, they never see a pen down in the delta. And somehow these fish are managing to get through all of the problems downstream and through all the problems out in the ocean. And they're coming back to Butte Creek right here in the center of Butte County. This is a treasure that people just do not appreciate. We have the last best run of wild, naturally spawned salmon in the state of California. And I would like you to reconsider the alternatives for 5 different study areas, all of which will impact the Butte Creek watershed. And this is something that all of this needs to be done on a watershed basis, because studies have shown very clearly in the Pacific Northwest that the higher the percentage of impervious surfaces in a watershed, the lower the salmon populations are. And you're probably all aware that many efforts, more than $30 million have been spent in the last 15 years to recover the salmon population on Butte Creek, which went from a population of 14 in 1987 to a peak of about 20,000 in 1998. We'll probably have close to 10,000 fish this year, which we've been averaging for 10 years now. It would be a very sad situation to see the developments, particularly in section or area 9, that will put 1,500 new homes into the Butte Creek watershed, all of which will add up that impervious surface percentage, increase the runoff of pesticides and fertilizers, motor oil, and everything else associated with urban development. And what we could be facing is a reversal of this incredible restoration that's taken place on Butte Creek. So I just ask you to reconsider the water quality impacts of study areas 5, 9, 10, 17, and 15, all of which will impact the Butte Creek watershed and the water quality that supports this incredible run of fish that we have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next.
My name is Nora Burnham. I have, this is too loose now. I'll hold it. I have the fortune of living just a mile and a half up the road this way, and I am here again to speak on 15 like I did last week. I would like you to reconsider it for the same reasons. Putting it out smack dab in the middle of the county, I don't think is a good idea. I appreciate that you left 19 and 18 and 14 primarily agriculture, and I ask that you do that as well. The gentleman that spoke earlier for section 19 was saying he could make a great gateway to Chico, but I would prefer to see the Buttes coming in from the south to Chico to see that what Butte County is named after. So please reconsider that. And Tony, I just have to disagree with you on the overabundance of numbers. We don't need the numbers of all the housing sky high. These numbers seem totally ridiculous, and it's scary that people want to project that high for 20 years or 30 years down the road. Sorry, I said that in Oroville too.
Thank you. Next.
Good evening. My name is Jay Berkowitz. I'm the general manager of Tuscan Ridge Golf Club. I just wanted to bring to your attention, you have a petition in your packet with approximately 463 signatures or so of golfers that I see on a regular basis that are in support of our project. We've had some speakers speaking to the asset it is to the community. I just want to reiterate that. I see on a regular basis how many people come to our golf course. We have roughly 30,000 golfers that we will see this year, and without our houses, we're going to have a hard time staying. So I just want to really urge you to pay attention to how important the golf course is to this community, and make sure you look at that petition.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Thanks.
Excuse me.
Question.
I have a question. I was noticing in the petition you only had 2 women's names, and I noticed that you keep referring to it as a men's club. And I understood that you gave this, but just being a girl and just wondering, are there any women on your staff, and is it a man and woman's club or just a man's club?
No, we have a growing women's club. We approximately have 60 women in our women's club. We have a women's play day every Tuesday. About 40 women come to the facility. So
I mean, all the signatures on the petition were men too. I saw like 2 women.
No, we have Butte College men's and women's team that come to the golf course. We have Chico State men's and women's teams that practice at our facilities. We have all the high schools, men's and women's teams.
Now enough of that personal question. Given the competition of the existing golf courses and the growth, do you feel that this is something that's going to substantially be able to be viable in a competitive industry? I mean, as we grow,
Sure.
is there enough room for all of you? And what if there
Sure.
were more?
We think so. In 2006, we had 17,000 rounds. And in 2008, we think we're going to do about 30,000 rounds. We did about 24,000 rounds last year. So, we're growing, but we're not there yet. Our overhead is high. It's difficult to maintain a golf course. We are competitive. We're at a disadvantage. We're one of the 3 public golf courses in the county, but 2 of those are partially subsidized by municipalities. We're not. We pay market rate rent, so we are at a disadvantage in that way, but we're doing better.
Sorry.
Okay.
Thank
you.
Oh. I had a question. The golf course operates under a use permit now from the county, right?
Yes, it does.
And does that use permit stipulate as to the condition of development of a golf course with respect to housing?
I'm not sure currently our use permit says anything about the housing. It's just
there's
the
no
use
housing.
permit for
There's
the
no
golf course.
housing in the use permit right
It's
now.
my understanding that there was some specific language in that use permit about not only no housing being permitted, but no expectation that any was coming in the future. Does anybody have that, or?
Don't know that offhand.
I don't know that either.
Okay, thank you. Next.
Okay.
Good evening. My name is Don Swartz, and I represent Area 14. I would respectfully ask that you look at Area 14 again for economic development for the research park along Highway 99. We had worked with the county for years on their business and research park zoning, which was spoken about earlier. We think it's an appropriate site. We believe it can be graciously done. I have passed out through Tim's office some information, and there's really 3 points in that. One is to briefly look at the history, that we're trying to stay consistent with the history of the county and the city of Chico as it has looked at this area for future growth. The second is to ask you to speak directly to the question of annexation for this property. It's kind of been really not spoken about too much, but we think if the Citizens Advisory Committee can say, we'd like this property to stay in the county or we'd like it to go to the city, that would be a helpful decision. The third and last part is simply some correspondence we had with the county about the landfill, recommending a 2,000-foot setback and offering an easement to the county for that. Thanks very much. I'll be here and be ready to answer any questions if you reconsider. Thank you.
And last but not least.
My name's Richard Jones. I'm from Durham. My family's been in Durham for 157 years. I've developed down there. I know the area quite well. One of the things I wanted to make sure of, last time I was here, they said there was no water in Durham, and I hope that did influence you when you made your decision to choose alternative number 1. I would choose the same thing if I thought there was no water. And actually, there is plenty of water there, and the area can expand. 20 years ago, the county put in a plan called the D2N plan, which was to eliminate 5-acre parcel splits. And I think that's a very good plan, and most of the people I know in Durham don't want 5-acre parcels. Unfortunately, your decision has now created 5-acre parcels. I don't quite understand it. Apartments and 5-acre parcels, which we tried to get rid of for 20 years because they're inefficient, they're a waste of land, and you can't do any infrastructure work there. So, I mean, I just don't really understand why we would have D2N plan, everybody likes it, and then you guys throw it out and say, well, we want 5-acre parcels. And then excuse me, go ahead.
Yeah, it was my understanding when we took that vote that we were voting for the option that would incorporate the Durham-Dayton Nelson plan.
That's what I thought.
Well, that's...
Anybody else remember that? Or
That's what I thought we were voting for, too.
Well, I'm sorry. You know, I'm just
Yes.
going by what it says in the, you know, it's right here. You look it up in the deal. You know, here it is. Very low density, 5 acres. I mean, I don't think anybody in Durham wants 5 acres. Now, unless the group that was here, which the cheerleading group, I don't think they represent everybody in in Durham. I really don't. I think they were put together to try and get people together to incorporate Durham. I don't think anybody wants to do that, number one. And I don't know how many people were on that, were signed up for that group. So I just don't know anybody that wants 5-acre parcels and apartments in Durham. And that's what you guys voted for. It's kind of a puzzlement to me.
I think it may be an issue with the consultant and the way it got tabulated, because everybody here, I think, voted
we're on
almost
your
unanimously
side.
for the
Well,
Durham-Dayton plan.
well, but you voted for 5-acre parcels. I don't get it. Yes,
No.
you did. It's right.
Well, sir, hang on. Those of us who were at the meeting think that we voted to support what you are standing for this evening. So give us a second here.
Okay.
What we're coming to terms with is 1 acre minimum.
This is, if you look right here.
I'll tell you what, why don't we work this out at the break, and we'll report back, okay?
Okay, and then let's see. So, I mean, one of the things I believe is Durham has all the assets that any community could possibly to have smart growth from the center out versus up on the ridge and so forth and so on. We've got all, deep soil down there, all the good water, all the assets you could probably want to have smart growth.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to take a 10-minute break. We'll start back at 8 o'clock. Get your coffee, get reared up, because we're going to fire it up here at 8 o'clock.